How often have you heard it said by someone, America was founded as a Christian nation? Or maybe if it wasn't a Christian nation, it was at least founded on Christian principles. Is this true? Was America founded as a Christian country? Or was it founded on Christian principles? Well, the latter, that it was founded on Christian principles, is probably more true than the former, which is that America was a Christian country. But it's not as true as many of us imagine. Some people think that we had this time in America, this golden age of Christianity, when everyone believed in God and we had a basic understanding of morality with everyone. Is that true? Maybe to a degree. But if we look at history, we'll find something a little different. That's what we're going to talk about today. So, America, when it was founded, what kind of beliefs was it founded on? The evolution of thought that led to the forming of the government that's now the United States of America was significantly influenced by Christianity, because you couldn't not be influenced by Christianity. Writer of the Federalist Papers, one of the writers of the Federalist Papers, and the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, John Jay, was a dedicated Christian. But most other founding fathers were nominal Christians at best and deists, if not atheists, at worst. They were primarily influenced by things like humanism and the Enlightenment. And though these things were influenced by Christianity and prior Christian thought also influenced the ideas of the founding fathers. These ideas, like humanism and the Enlightenment, were often non-Christian, and in their modern iteration in the world that we live in today, humanism is often anti-Christian. So we can confidently say that the US was not and is not a Christian country. Why? Because official government documents, not from 50 years ago, not from 100 years ago, from 1797, only about a decade after the US was created as a government, there were documents that said that it isn't. In the treaty with Tripoli, which is modern-day Libya, in Article 11, it states, "As the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Muslims," or Muslimin, as it said originally, "and as the states never entered into any war or act of hostility against any Mohammedan nation, it is declared by the parties that no pretext arising from religious opinions shall ever produce an interruption of the harmony existing between the two countries." What is saying? In other words, one of the arguments of why the US could have peaceful relations with the country of Tripoli, modern-day Libya, which was not Christian, it was a Muslim country, and we still know that it is today, that on the fact that the US is not a Christian nation. That's why they could have peaceful relations with Tripoli. Some people argue that apparently the article wasn't written in the Arabic version, but that doesn't really matter. The document the US Senate voted on was in English, and that statement was in there. So it was officially documented, voted on, and ratified that the US assumes itself to be a secular country, a non-Christian country. That's right. The government of the United States is not Christian. It was not meant to be Christian, and the goal of the government is not to bring it back to its Christian roots. Okay, so the US wasn't and isn't a religious country, but should it stay that way? There are many Christians that think that it shouldn't. So this is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. Politics are complicated and confusing. Sometimes that which seems the right thing to do turns out to be completely wrong. Why? Because governments are people. They aren't people. They're systems. Systems that hold power. And usually it's a monopoly on power. And what happens when religious people get a hold of power? The fact is that's not always great. Sins become illegal. Imagine it becoming illegal to sin. I understand that stealing is a sin and it's illegal today. Right? There are some sins that are illegal. I understand that other things like murder is a sin and it's illegal. But imagine telling a lie becomes a sin. Any lie. I'm not talking about perjury. I'm talking about lying to your neighbor becomes a sin that you can get indicted on. Imagine gossip becoming illegal. You might think, well, that's cool. That might disincentivize people from sinning. But that isn't true. If you read the Old Testament, you would know that God actually already made sin illegal once. He created a whole government system for Israel where the law would punish sins. Sins were illegal. In fact, there were things in place, there were laws in place, traditional cultural laws that would not allow you to do things that are seemingly illogical, like not being able to wear clothes of multiple cloth, multiple materials. Why? God had a reason for it. But the fact is, as all these things, they turned into law. And what happened? Did the people all of a sudden become God-fearing and God-loving? Did people turn to God with all their heart and begin to worship him? No. The people either turned to other gods and became idolaters, or eventually they became Pharisees and Sadducees, which we understand is the complete opposite side. It's sort of the far right of religiosity. It's people who become significantly more radicalized, but not really closer to God. Jesus came because a top-down system of laws doesn't work. You can't change a heart of a person, and you can't transform a country to become amazing and good through top-down laws. You can't change the laws of a country and make it Christian. People will always find loopholes. They might be relatively good people, but sticking to the rules that God expects from them is literally impossible. Literally impossible. Trying to make any country into a Christian nation is a pointless task. It isn't going to happen. You can't get into the government, become the president, and all of a sudden make a bunch of people Christians. You can never introduce enough laws to make people God-fearing and Christ-following citizens. People will continue to have sinful desires and will find ways to act on them. To actually get people to do what you tell them, you will have to use force, which is precisely what Jesus teaches against. We don't use force. In fact, the message that we send, that we preach, comes in a peaceful form. When Jesus began teaching, he proclaimed the kingdom of God is here. That means the government of God, God's version of relationship between government and people is here. That moment changed everything. The kingdom of God was a reimagination of what a kingdom is. In this kingdom, the king is born in a barn, not in a palace. He grows up in a blue-collar home. He works as a carpenter and lives in a poor town. When he reaches adulthood, he begins walking around and teaching. His initial followers are fishermen. He enters his royal city, not on a horse, not with an army, on a donkey, and children surround him and celebrate his coming. He punishes his people who turned his home into a den of thieves. But a few days later, he takes upon himself the brunt of their punishment and is led onto a hill where he is killed. And in 3 days, miraculously, he rises from the dead, proclaiming that he is the king who lives forever and that all his kingdom's citizens will also live forever. This kingdom is different. It's a grassroots movement. Maybe you've heard of the idea of politics is downstream from culture. Yeah, that's pretty true, but culture is downstream from the hearts of people. It starts with individuals. Every individual first experiences a spiritual change. Then this change leads to physical effects. Then these individuals who experience these spiritual and physical changes, they then spread the word about these physical and spiritual changes, and they call it news, good news. This message leads to a group of individuals who begin to meet. They call themselves the church. Actually, Jesus called them the church. Each church meets locally in its community. They continue to spread the message and grow in their ability to follow the teachings their eternal King taught them. They're helped by an unseen spirit that works by the power of the King, by the power of the King, and it lives within them. These churches, they exist in the millions. They're all over the world. They aren't perfect. Sometimes they have different opinions from each other on some things. They have different hierarchies in their gatherings, but what unites all of them is their common faith and commitment to their King, Jesus. This is the nation that we're building. We're not building America or any other nation. It's a nation that is made up actually of every other nation, and it doesn't need any borders. It's not one specific geographical country. Instead, It is filling the world. Our goal isn't to take over one country and make it Christian. Our goal is for everyone to be Christian. And until that happens, it doesn't end. And then our common primary influence will be Jesus. If you want America to become Christian, don't fight political battles with people. It doesn't fix anything. Tell people about the King of Kings, whose kingdom is forever. And nothing, not America or any other country, will ever replace that. Blessings and Merry Christmas.